The law is complex, but it doesn't have to be a mystery. We are talking legal literacy, not advice. So don't worry, you're not getting an invoice. I'm Simon Jenga, and welcome to Simon Says. Today we are talking about when you should instruct a lawyer. Often in these videos I kind of lead you through a bit of academic background to a topic before I give you my assessment or my recommendation on a specific point. Today I'm going to do it in reverse because it's so important, this particular point. Now, my recommendation is to get advice from your legal advisor before you are locked in to any deal. Now, that quickly requires an explanation of what I mean by locked in. So, locked in means that you cannot get out of a deal and you cannot change the deal. So a good example of that would be if you are buying a property and you have a sale and purchase agreement. That sale and purchase agreement, if it is unconditional and you have signed it, then you are locked into the deal. Now there's various conditions that you can put in to protect yourself, to give you time to do certain further investigations before you are 100% committed to that deal. But here's the rub. You can only do what those conditions say you can do to get out. So if it's a finance condition, you can only get out based on not being able to get finance. If it's a limb report condition, you can only get out if there's a problem with the limb report. So if you have an agreement and it has conditions, you are limited to whatever the scope of those conditions are. Hence why my advice is talk to your trusted legal advisor before you sign that document. Because even though you might think that you have the ability to get out, it might turn out that actually you are more locked in than you thought. The only way to truly know that is to make sure that you've had that advice ahead of time. Now I can hear you saying, but if I know how to read a contract and I've read the contract and I've understood the terms, then I can just make that decision myself. Which is a 100% valid counterpoint to everything that I just said. You don't know what you don't know. Now that is a lawyer's job day in, day out, is to review contracts, review legal wording to make sure that it's doing what you think it's doing. It's our job to take care of interpreting those documents for you. I would liken it to if you were building a table and you wanted it to be 2.5 meters long and you were cutting the wood yourself versus if you got a carpenter or a table maker to do it. Now if you get someone else to do it, I bet that you would want it to be exactly to the specifications that you have given them, and you would expect it to be. If you do it yourself and it's within cooey of 2.5 meters, it's probably going to be all right. So the only question becomes is, are you willing to pay to know that it is 100% right? And that's kind of where we come in. I hate to use the phrase it's someone to blame, but that kind of is part of it, that you're really instructing someone to review the document. If I get it wrong, then you have someone to blame. So my attention to detail, my particular care I'm going to take with that document, is of a different variety than perhaps yours would be. I would liken it to doing kind of one of those triangle diagrams where you've got risk, cost, and speed. So if you want to do something quick and low cost, then you're going to take on more risk. If you want to minimize your risk and minimize your cost, it's probably going to take more time. And then if you want to minimize the time, do it quick, minimize the risk, it's probably going to cost more to do. And that's the trade-off. So whatever deal you're doing, whatever contract you're entering into, you need to do a risk assessment as to whether it is worth getting the advice at whatever point. Let's say before you sign, after you sign, but you think you're conditional, once you're unconditional, to just handle the transaction. And you can do your own risk assessment to decide when you want to bring in a professional. What I will tell you is that the later you leave it, the more limited an advisor is in their ability to change the deal, to advise you either to get out or to double down, or even just the options that may have been possible between the parties that you didn't even know were possibilities. So it might be that there was a way of doing things that you hadn't even thought of, and that outside perspective might be what it takes. Now, that could be that you don't instruct a lawyer. It could be that you instruct your accountant to review the deal. It could be a professional advisor or a mentor. And of course, it could be a legal professional. And each person in that list is going to have a different slant, a different take, a different focus on the transaction to assist you in your decision making. Other than an endless pit of costs or a delay in time, which are certainly two of the biggest concerns that I see time and time again when it comes to people delaying getting legal advice on a transaction. So I think those two are pretty well accepted parameters. And so you need to find a legal advisor or a professional helper that is going to do it for a cost you feel comfortable with and in a time frame that you find acceptable. Bearing in mind that cost might be an unknown when you start out the process. So what you're looking for is someone that you trust that is going to charge you fairly, whether the transaction takes a week or 3 months. The other big thing that I come up against is, what if you don't find anything, Simon? Now, actually, for me, if I go through a 30-page contract and find nothing that I want to change, that has been money well spent. Because not only have you found out more about the document itself, that it's doing what you thought it was doing, you've found out about the other party, that they're probably drafting a fair, balanced document rather than extremely one-sided, slanted, or naughty document. And so me not finding anything is actually telling you a lot about the transaction that you're involved in. Compare that to you're about to go into business with someone, they present you with a contract to become shareholders together. If that document is full of changes that I'm recommending to you, that is now reflecting on your soon-to-be business partner of what they deem as a reasonable contract to put in front of you. That is going to give you information about how you want to proceed next. So finding things versus not finding things, for me, is not the communicator of value. It is, however, critical that you are of that mindset when you are getting a legal advisor to review documents for you. What you are wanting is for them to have fully reviewed the documents, point out anything that needs to change. If things are drafted slightly different than how I would draft them, but the legal effect is the same, those are not the main concerns. The main concerns are the things that have a different legal effect to what is either in your best interests or what you have told me you want the deal to be. So even if it's that a term is to your detriment, my focus is on whether you understand that and whether that is what you want to do. If you want to give $50,000 to your neighbour, even though you legally don't have to, it is your prerogative to do that. What is unacceptable is that you don't know that that's what you're doing, and or you don't know that you are not required to do it. So the purpose of that advice is to make sure that you understand your position, you understand the options that are available to you, and then you can proceed fully informed with whatever decisions that you want to make. The other nugget that I would put in here in terms of costs is that from my perspective, often if you instruct me before you are locked into a deal versus if you instruct me after you are locked in, the cost for me to review that contract is exactly the same most of the time. So the only time it's going to be cheaper is if you ask me not to review the document at all. If you are choosing between waiting until the contract is signed or unsigned to get my advice around the substance of the document, and you're going to take my advice seriously, always do that beforehand, because cost shouldn't be a factor between those two positions. Hopefully you found this helpful. in the new setting of my home. Hit that subscribe and like button, and if you think someone else might enjoy this content or get something out of it, please share it with them. I want to reach as many people as I can, and I can only do that with your support. And remember, at LOA Law, we are good lawyers for good people.